Dear listeners, I have so much to tell you, and I often don't know where to start. It seems the world doesn't want to admit that sometimes we make mistakes, and that sometimes the wrong person gets punished for something they didn't do. Not all of us have been personally affected, but many of us have been impacted by this reality. And I feel like it's my responsibility to share these stories with you and to tell you what I've learned about wrongful convictions. Welcome back to Wrongfully Yours. Today, we continue our conversation with Leslie Vass. When we left off, Leslie had been wrongfully convicted as a teenager and sentenced to 20 years in prison based on mistaken eyewitness identification and a system that failed to protect a youth. What followed was nearly a decade of incarceration, during which Leslie began the long and difficult work of uncovering the truth himself. Today, Leslie shares how his wrongful conviction was finally exposed. It wasn't through institutional accountability, but through persistence, self-education, and evidence the system initially refused to acknowledge. He also takes us through what happened after his release, challenging the assumption that freedom marks the end of injustice. This isn't a story about closure. It's about what happens when a conviction is overturned, but its consequences remain embedded in records, reputations, and lives. Today's conversation asks a harder question. What does justice actually require when the harm doesn't end with exoneration? And so today, this is a conversation about truth, accountability, and what justice really requires when the conviction is overturned, but the harm continues. So, welcome back, Leslie. It's great to have you here. And we were having a very heated conversation last time about your experience and how you ended up being wrongfully convicted of basically going to the store in a
Yeah,
routine kind
yeah,
of way, and being
yeah.
charged with something completely different. So I guess at this point, I want to kind of touch on what it was like for you coming home. Like, how did your wrongful conviction get uncovered? How did it get cleared up that, it wasn't you? And then what's it been like since you've been home? And is it like on the movies that we swing the gates open and you come home and
Oh,
everybody lives
no.
happily ever after?
No, no, it's none of that. Not for me, it wasn't. I I know a lot of other exonerees too over these years and realized that it's not, and we need to be able to share this. But how I got exonerated, I actually a fellow came to me while I was still inside the jail system, and he said to me that he just told me, he said, "Man," he said, "them people mistake you for my stepbrother, man."
No.
And I said, "Really?" I had heard people had told me before that they had mistaken me for this guy, and but I hear things and I don't. And then he said, "Well, when we get ready to go in," he said, he slept in the dormitories and I was in the cells, right? And he said, "I'm gonna give you a photograph of my brother." He said, "Send it to a lawyer, man, and ask them to take it to that victim and see if that victim can identify it." And I had been locked up 7 years at that time, right?
Wow. Okay. I also
It,
feel like you're sitting there going, "No, I don't wanna deal with any more lawyers. I'm not sending anything to any lawyer."
yeah, right. That's where I was because
It's
I
not like you
didn't
had great
trust.
experiences up until this
Yeah,
point.
I didn't, and then the fact that mine was involved with the Attorney Grievance Commission, when my name come up, he could actually have he got a lot of associates and so forth,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I mean that judicial thing, judicial uh, uh, career thing is a lot, but I actually got a public defender. I sent a letter to the public defender's office, explained to them that I had a photograph and I wanted to send it to them so that they could have an investigator take it to the victim. It took them 2 years to get back to me, and they finally got back to me and said that they sent me a letter saying that they commended me for all my efforts and all the all the things that I've been putting forth to actually try to win my freedom, but it was nothing else that their office could do for me in my case because you know it's, there's a statute, right?
Right.
They couldn't file a supplemental post conviction for me or none of that because they had did one already and it was denied. So I waited and we started hearing about this new state's attorney that had won, and everybody was expecting that this man was going to be different because he was black.
Okay.
You
And sorry, this
understand?
is just for context, this is the '80s now, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This the '80s now, right? You're talking about like '82
Okay.
at the time. So I writes to him when he first gets in office, explain to him what had happened. You know, I got this photograph, so forth. And they write me back, telling me there's nothing they can do for me, and I need to go back to the public defender's office. So I filed a pro se 1983 civil suit in the federal court. So I'm in the federal courts, and I bring up the issue about the never being charged as an adult without a waiver hearing up under the juvenile clause that should have been.
Right.
And I put on there that I had a photograph that I've been asked the state to send someone out to that I learned was the name of the person who actually committed the crime and they wouldn't help me. So the administrative judge wrote me back and said that they are precluded by law from going forth with it because the state has to have ample opportunity to address the issue about the photograph. So that's how I got it back to the state level.
Okay.
Then they sent an investigator out to the victim, and he positively identified the picture of the man saying that he even had on the same shirt when they
Wow.
robbed him.
So the victim who said that, "Oh, you kind of look like him, maybe, I'm not sure," but now he sees this photo and he knows for sure this
Yeah,
is the person.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He
That has
positively
got to
identified.
be compelling.
Yeah. But then when we go to court, the new state's attorney, before we go to court, he comes to the jail to advise me that he's offering me a deal to plead nolo contendere to one count of the original information that was filed against me for for the armed robbery. And he would grant me a release. If I didn't, he was gonna get the judge to dismiss the petition based on the in-court identification that was made by the victim in the original trial, right? And
Wow.
I was like, wow. Even though you know that I'm innocent,
Right.
you- and I
That's what's
mean,
going through my
when I
head is that you're telling me right now, you know I'm
oh
innocent, but you don't want to admit that I'm innocent.
no, I'm looking at this man face to face, and I'm saying, you really understand and know that I didn't commit this crime, but you want me to make a deal with you so that I can get out and still
Instead of just
carry
admitting you made a mistake.
and still carry the criminal conviction for this crime that I had nothing to do with.
Yes.
Wow. It was a lot. It was a lot. I went through a lot about that. Now, I was granted a court release by the judge in the case. After getting out, there were no innocent organizations or none of that in existence at
Sure.
that time. I
Yep.
got out October 1984. There was no innocent
Project.
project, Centurion Ministries, nothing, right? There were no other organizations that even dealt with people who were considered wrongfully convicted because
Well,
they didn't believe that that's something that happened
I
at
was
that
gonna
time.
say there was not as much of an open mindset. I mean, there was still a lot of
Yeah, it
just
was a lot
believing
of
the
people.
system always gets it right.
No, I mean, I wrote a mail when I was in prison asking him for help, and he wrote me back to say that courts don't make mistakes. Serve your time.
Yep.
That's what
Yep.
he said to me.
Yep.
And guess what? And guess what? He was still mad when I came home.
Oh,
And 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 when I went down there before him to see him, he refused to talk to me, right? Wait a minute. Then he became the governor right after that.
stop.
Yeah. And when I went before him, he reminded me of our letters and stuff, right? I was actually granted a full unconditional pardon by the previous governor before he went in office. That governor also allocated $1 million in the budget to pay me compensation for the 10 years that I spent wrongfully in prison.
Right.
They held my case up until this new judge, the new governor came in office. That was the mayor. And when he came in office, he took $800,000 out of the awardment that was supposed to be for me and purchased what they called the executive yacht that sat in the Annapolis Basin here in Baltimore and in Maryland and rusted, right? And he made it clear to me that his feelings was just like, you know,
That
and I, and,
I
but
just don't even have any words, and I have to tell you it takes a lot to make me speechless, and I just have no words.
yeah, and all this that I'm saying to you is all records. But nonetheless, I was I was blessed because I was out of prison, but I still got a criminal history for a crime that I did not commit.
Sure.
So I started advocating for myself. I ended up going on news programs and talking with reporters and sharing my information with them. And they started writing about this story. Washington Post did an article. Was introduced to a man named Rob Warden up at Northwestern University. And I met with Mr. Warden and talked with him. And he introduced me to a guy named Barry Sheck and Peter Newfield,
Sure.
who were professors at Northwestern University.
Still not the Innocence Project, right, at this
They
time?
wasn't the Innocent Project at that time. And when they talked to me about my case, that's was what they was talking about. Right after that is when they created the Innocent Project. By the grace of God, I was able to go to the Innocent Network Conference in 2018 in Memphis, Tennessee, where I met Barry Sheck in the hallway, and I reminded him
Wow.
when he saw my badge and saw that I was an ambassador for the Innocent Network and Exonerees, he said, "Well, where you live?" He said, "You from Maryland?" He said, "And you the oldest one?" He said, "Kurt Bloodworth." I said,
Ah,
not Kurt." I said, "I'm before Kurt." I said, "I remember talking to you," and I reminded him about that conversation. And when he got up on the stand to address the 200 and some exonerees that was there, he said, "I met the fellow who actually gave us the idea to do this." He said, "This fellow is older. He's older than the project." And I
wow.
was like, "You ain't had to put it like that."
Yeah. You could have
But
said so many other things.
yeah, but you know, let me share something with you. I've had to, even though I've gotten 4 different expungement orders for the state to destroy the criminal convictions for that armed robbery case,
Sure.
it hasn't been done. I've
Sorry,
gotten paid.
today it still hasn't been done, so, like, 50 years later?
I started working for an organization called Catholic Charities here in November of 2024. They did a background check on me,
Right.
right? part of the conviction is still on the background check, right?
Wow.
I actually am now have actually submitted my case to the University of Baltimore School of Law, and they have been looking at it. And this is, when people look at your case and they say, "Wow, how can I believe this?"
Okay, I'm
You
not the
know,
only one.
right,
So
right,
I just want to stop on this for a second because I think this
uh,
is so important to get across because I think this is something that is not fully appreciated or understood or even thought of in a lot of cases is you're released. You know, you have been wrongfully convicted. We are
right.
sure, like, we know that this is a wrongful conviction. It's been overturned. And yet, that conviction still haunts you
Yes, it
50
does.
years
Yes, it
later.
does.
Like, it
Yes,
doesn't
it
just
does.
go away magically. And this is
But
something
see,
that I've heard a lot at the Innocence conferences when I speak with exonerees is that exoneration and expungement, 2 totally different things. And
right. I cannot believe that, you know, when you got a pardon, a full unconditional pardon, that absolves you from anything and everything.
apparently not.
No, I know. But the thing about it is that because, and I asked them, what does a pardon mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean? People said, well, I'm going to get a pardon. So what? I got one of them. They throw them out like cookies these days. So, I mean, I've had to go to court and represent myself against a wrongful conviction. I had a traffic ticket. I was working for the public defender's office here in Maryland as an intake specialist paralegal. I was out serving subpoenas and got stopped by the police, and they told me my license was suspended. We go to court for the trial for the traffic ticket, and the judge is talking about, oh, Mr. Vass, Mr. Vass is the fellow who was wrongfully in prison for 10 years, and they act like they had an all actual attitude because
Wow.
I got a ticket, and then after they did what they did, they recused themselves
Wow.
from the court, like you had animosity towards me because I was wrongfully in prison for something that I didn't do, and I've been fighting for myself.
Yep.
Yes, I've been complaining about the wrongful convictions never being expunged. Like you got 4 separate orders that said that you did them.
Yep.
If I went to court or you went to court and the judge gave you an order to do something and you didn't do it, what would happen?
Excellent question.
You
Excellent
just see what I'm
question.
saying?
I sure do.
We would be penalized for that
Yep.
and thrown in jail,
Yep.
right?
And we
But here
certainly
it is, the state has done it, and it's nothing that no recourse to it.
yeah, we
And
certainly
each
couldn't
time,
refuse to do something for 50 years without any repercussions.
yeah, but then the other part of that is that I'm showing where an attorney general who represents the agency that's supposed to expunge the criminal records has falsely said that they expunged them.
Oh,
Yeah, but don't nobody want to approach that. I had a video. I had a senator, the governor's office, the controller's office, the treasurer's office, the Maryland State General Counsel, and everything on a Zoom meeting.
wow. Wow.
When they learned that he had actually did that, they start turning the cameras off then, right? And that happened in 2022. And since then, they refused to address the issue. They refused to do anything in regards to it. And that wrongful conviction caused my 4 minor children, in 2005, 2004 to be placed in state foster care.
Oh my god.
When they when they rearrested me and held me without bail, saying that I was involved in a stabbing. Now, when they notified me about they didn't say what the charge was or anything. All they said was that a warrant had been issued. I was working for the state of Maryland as an employment specialist. I had been there for over 5 years. I was awarded numerous awards in the community as the highest placement person and all that. When they told me that, I turned myself in. I went straight there. They asked me, have I ever been convicted of a felony? I said no, because the expungements were supposed to be
Sure.
done.
Yep.
Then the actual commissioner took the screen around and said, Mr. Vass, I can't release you on bail because the armed robbery is still on the case, on the file.
Wow.
I said, oh my God. I said, well, my children in school and stuff. She said, well, someone will have to go pick them up and they probably likely would be placed in foster care. Now I got a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 13-year-old that end up being placed in state foster care. One of them had just been awarded as the highest academic child in Baltimore. I
Wow.
still have her award and all. And they put her in a mental hospital.
Wow. What?
Yeah. So the wrongful conviction has not just been damaging to me,
Sure.
but it damaged my children.
No doubt.
And in 2021, I was awarded $577,000 for a law that the state said they should pay me because of the 10 years I spent in prison and it wasn't enough money back there. I said they only gave me back the $1 million that he took from me. So
Sure.
you ain't really award me nothing. But yet instead, the same services that they were supposed to give me up under that new statute were the same services that was contracted to give me back in 1987, and they never did. So now we're talking about after effects, the damages afterwards,
Yep.
not expunging the criminal history, that the use of that history against you, to damage your family, you know, um, people need to be understanding that when you get exonerated, it doesn't specifically mean that you are free.
Exactly, exactly, and I've had this conversation that there's a huge difference between being released and being free,
Yeah.
and other exonerees have spoken that
Mm,
coming home is not
mm.
the end. There is
No, it's not.
It's just the start of a new challenge, it's the start of a new story, it's the start of a new chapter, and, I think that is so important to get across, and I thank you so much for taking the time to share this with us because I don't think we can fully understand it until we hear from somebody who's experienced it like you
Yeah,
have.
yeah. Kelly, and closing, I would like to say I came home when I was 28. I'm 68 now. But I ain't had no peace, no mental peace whatsoever.
No doubt. How
And
can you when you have this shadow over you all the time?
that's what I'm talking about. Okay.
And, I really hope that there is resolution for you because this is just it just compounds the tragedy and it
Yeah.
just, prolongs the agony of your story.
But okay. There's a reason behind this, and I feel firm and strong that our ancestors is gonna continue to carry me each morning. All right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Well, thank
Well,
you so much for
thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you.
And I will put your website up on my link tree so that, people can access your website to find any more information about you and your case.
That's great. That's what I need.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help. In many ways, Leslie's story should have ended with his release. But in reality, that was only the beginning of another injustice. This is a case where innocence was eventually acknowledged, yet the damage was never fully undone. A case where expungement orders went unenforced and where a wrongful conviction continued to shape employment, family stability, and personal safety decades later. Leslie's experience exposes a truth we don't talk about often enough. The justice system isn't designed to repair the harm it causes. Even when a conviction is overturned, accountability remains elusive, and the burden of correction is pushed back onto the person who is wronged. This is not about the past. It's about what happens when the system refuses to let go of its mistakes and the consequences are carried quietly and permanently by the people it has already wronged. In that silence, innocence is left to serve as the final remedy. And while acknowledgement is a beginning, it cannot stand in for repair. Until restitution follows recognition, justice will always remain unfinished. And while today's letter may have piqued your interest, this is only part of the story. There's still so much more to tell. The effects of wrongful convictions are far-reaching. They touch us all. I'll write to you again soon as I continue my conversations with those whose lives have been impacted by a wrongful conviction. But until then, I remain wrongfully yours. And so, if you were moved by this episode, please consider sharing it with others, liking and reviewing us, and following the podcast on your favorite platform so you don't miss what comes next. And as always, thanks for listening to Wrongfully Yours, where we believe that telling these stories is the first step towards preventing the next injustice. And until next time, stay curious, stay hopeful, and keep fighting for justice. If you have something that you want to talk about with me, or even if you want to just send me some words of encouragement, you can drop me a line at wrongfullyyourspodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out my website, kellylozon.ca, for more information about me and the kinds of things that I do.